Ever wondered what teenage fashion looked like in the 1960s? Back then, teens were bold, rebellious, and trendsetters. From miniskirts to psychedelic prints, their unique style defined an era. Let's dive into the most iconic teen fashion trends of the 60s. Miniskirts. Some people, for one reason or another, might have reservations about miniskirts today, but it was a popular trend in the 1960s. The definition of ladylike skirts before the 60s was long, conservative. However, a British designer by the name Mary Quant in 1964 had a different idea. She took the traditional skirt and trimmed it several inches shorter to create a youthful look that fit the fashion evolution of the times. She named it the miniskirt after the trendy Mini Cooper car. And suddenly, the miniskirt became the new deal. It became so popular that any teenage girl who didn't have a miniskirt was considered outdated. At first, the older generation resisted it. Some parents even scolded their children because they believed only women with easy virtue should be caught wearing such flimsy clothes. But teenage girls didn't care. They loved how the miniskirt challenged outdated expectations and made them feel modern and stylish. After a while, the older generation had no choice but to accept it, and that was how the miniskirt became synonymous with teenage fashion in the 1960s. These days, miniskirts are still worn among teenagers and even older people who are bold enough to try it. Mod style. The term mod was culled from the word modernist. From this term alone, it is easy to know the story behind it. It came from new ideas in music, art, and fashion. Unlike previous styles, mod fashion was sharp and sleek. The mod style had A-line dresses, color-blocked patterns, and knee-high boots. One of the biggest celebrities of mod fashion was Twiggy, the world's first supermodel. Her pixie haircut, oversized eyelashes, and slim frame made her the perfect face for the mod movement. As you can guess, teenage girls everywhere wanted to be like her, so they were wearing mini dresses with bold prints and structured tailoring. For boys, the Beatles were the ultimate mod fashion influence. They ditched the leather jackets that used to be popular in their early rock days and tilted towards slim-fitting suits, Chelsea boots, and tailored coats. Before anyone could say Jack, the mod fashion had become a sensation. Their polished style made every teenage boy want to dress the same way. The hippie look. Another fashion trend that took the 1960s by storm was the hippie look. Those who were around then would tell you it was a fashion movement that wasn't just about clothes, but more about freedom. The counterculture movement motivated hippie fashion, so it said goodbye to the neat tailoring that was once popular. In place of that, it embraced flowing fabrics, loose shapes, and radiant patterns. During this time, the goal was simple. It was to break free from society's expectations and be more of themselves. Tie-dye shirts became a huge trend, with their swirly colors that showed creativity. Teens would even make their own tie-dye at home by dipping shirts into buckets of dye to create unique patterns. Bell-bottom jeans were another popular style, with their broad, flared pants that gave a relaxed, effortless vibe. Also, accessories played a big role in the hippie look. Beaded necklaces, leather sandals, fringed vests, and headbands took the style from 1 to 100. The reigning music at the time had its role to play too, with artists like Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, and the Grateful Dead rocking the look on stage. Consequently, it became popular among teens. That's not all. Woodstock, the legendary 1969 music festival, became the ultimate showcase of hippie fashion, with thousands of young people dressed in flowy dresses, patchwork jeans, and bare feet. Go-go boots. The mid-1960s brought with it the go-go boots. They were created by French designer André Courrèges, who made them as part of his futuristic fashion collection. Unlike the high heels of the 1950s, these boots were bold, modern, and built for movement. The go-go boots were made of shiny vinyl or leather, and mostly came in bright white. This made them stand out against the colorful mod dresses that were reigning at the time. Go-go boots quickly became what every youth wanted to wear. They got their name from the go-go dancers, the young women who performed high-energy dance routines in clubs and on TV shows like Hullabaloo and Shindig. These dancers wore short dresses, teased hair, and, of course, their famous white boots. Teen girls everywhere wanted a pair. The boots were the ideal match for the mod look, as they go effortlessly with miniskirts, A-line dresses, and colorful tights. They also added a touch of forward-looking style and made any outfit instantly trendy. By the late 1960s, go-go boots were everywhere. And no, they weren't just for the dance floor. They became an everyday fashion item. Pop icons like Nancy Sinatra made them even more popular with songs like "These Boots Are Made for Walkin'." Psychedelic prints. Psychedelic prints were introduced in the mid to late 1960s and were inspired by the era's music, art movement. Bands like the Beatles, Jefferson Airplane, and the Jimi Hendrix Experience were busy experimenting with new sounds, and fashion followed suit. Clothing was used for wild, swirling patterns, bold color combinations, and abstract designs. The look was heavily influenced by the rise of psychedelic rock and the Summer of Love in 1967. As hippie culture took over, fashion designers took on the movement's free-spirited, anti-establishment vibe. It was almost as if everywhere you looked were on shirts, skirts, dresses, scarves, and even bell-bottom jeans. For teenagers, wearing psychedelic prints shouted a statement of rebellion and self-expression. These loud, eye-catching designs were the opposite of the neat, conservative clothing that older folks had worn just a decade earlier. When worn with fringed vests, round sunglasses, and headbands, groovy prints showed that you were part of a new generation. Beatnik fashion. In the early 1960s, beatnik fashion was popular among writers and artists. Public figures like Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, and Bob Dylan rejected materialism and embraced a bohemian lifestyle filled with poetry, jazz, and deep conversations about life. Their fashion showed mindsets that were simple and effortlessly chic. For teenagers who felt different from the typical clean-cut, preppy crowd, the beatnik style was an alternative identity. It wasn't about bright colors or flashy patterns. It was more about intelligence and rebellion in a more subtle way. Back then, boys and girls alike wore slim black pants, striped or solid turtlenecks, oversized sweaters, and berets. Not only that, black sunglasses and a book of poetry under the arm were practically required accessories. In the same vein, French cinema also contributed to the beatnik aesthetic. Actresses like Juliette Gréco and films like Breathless popularized the effortless intellectual style. Jesus sandals. One of the most popular footwear trends of the decade was the Jesus sandal. No, there is nothing spiritual about it. It was a simple, strappy leather sandal that was inspired by ancient designs. These sandals became known with the hippie movement and were worn by young people who wanted to express their love for nature and individuality. For one, Jesus sandals were lightweight, comfortable, and easy to slip on. So they were perfect for outdoor festivals, casual outings, and everyday wear. They are often made with thin leather straps that wrap around the foot, sometimes with a buckle or lace-up design. Many teens wore them with bell-bottom jeans, flowy skirts, or tie-dye shirts. The main reason it became a must-have was its relaxed and effortless look. The trend was influenced by the growing popularity of counterculture movements, which rejected mainstream fashion in favor of more earthy, handmade styles. Celebrities and musicians of the era, such as the Beatles and Janis Joplin, helped popularize the look. Even today, Jesus sandals are still worn, as many top brands have now adopted them as a timeless fashion choice. The space-age look. If there is one thing the 1960s was known for, it was its obsession with space travel. The space race between the US and the Soviet Union was at its peak, and people were glued to their TVs, watching astronauts take their first steps beyond Earth. But space was doing more than inspiring scientists. Yeah, you guessed right, it was influencing fashion, too. Designers envisioned a world where people might live on the moon or travel through space, and their clothing reflected that vision. Metallic fabrics, plastic dresses, sleek bodysuits, and even space helmets made their way onto runways. These designs felt like something straight out of a science fiction movie. Since teenagers were impressionable, they started dreaming of a stylish, space-age fashion. One of the biggest names in space-age fashion was André Courrèges, a French designer who introduced geometric dresses and knee-high white boots. His outfits looked like something a fashionable astronaut might wear, with clean lines, bold colors, and futuristic materials. Another designer, Paco Rabanne, became famous for his metal dresses that were made from linked discs, creating an almost robotic, armor-like appearance. Teenagers, especially those in big cities, quickly loved and keyed into the trend. Go-go dancers, club kids, and fashion-forward teens rocked the look by pairing shiny silver mini dresses with tall white boots. Magazines also featured space-inspired makeup with glitter and futuristic hairstyles that made the style feel even more otherworldly. The Denim Revolution. Before the 1960s, jeans were nothing more than workwear worn by miners and factory workers. So how did denim go from practical to fashion? The answer lies in Hollywood. In the 1950s, actors like James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause and Marlon Brando in The Wild One made denim a popular choice as they were sturdy and stylish. Teenagers wanted to break away from the stiff, informal styles of their folks, and denim became a way to do it. By the 1960s, jeans were everywhere. Brands like Levi's, Wrangler, and Lee became must-haves for teenagers looking to embrace the laid-back, carefree lifestyle. At first, denim was mostly worn by boys, but by the mid-60s, teenage girls were also rocking high-waisted, slim-fit jeans that were sometimes paired with crop tops or tucked-in blouses. As the decade wore on, denim evolved with the times. The hippie movement was known for wearing bell-bottom jeans that were often embroidered or patched for a more personal touch. Rock stars also helped push the trend further. As if that was not enough, the Beatles, Bob Dylan, and Janis Joplin were all seen in denim. And before long, teenagers started buying it as a wardrobe essential, one that is still worn today. Hairstyles of the decade. In the 1960s, fashion went beyond clothes. It was head-to-toe self-expression, and that included some of the most talked-about hairstyles in history. For teenage girls, bigger was better. The beehive and bouffant were two of the most popular styles, which required endless teasing, backcombing, and a whole lot of hairspray. Made popular by Hollywood stars like Brigitte Bardot and Audrey Hepburn, these voluminous styles gave girls an elegant, glamorous look. Not all girls went for the ultra-feminine styles, though. By the mid-60s, British mod culture introduced sleeker, shorter haircuts, like the pixie cut that supermodel Twiggy made popular. It was fresh, modern, and easy to maintain, something that appealed greatly to teenagers at the time. Boys' hairstyles were also making waves. At the start of the decade, most teenage boys stuck with short, clean-cut styles. But that all changed when the Beatles came along. Their mop-top haircut, which was longer, shaggy, and effortlessly cool, became the must-have look for boys everywhere. So there you have it. Which of these 1960s fashions would you like to see again?